to somebody else to do. I've been working with the passenger train to try to get the passenger train up and running. And we just received a grant for 50,000 through the Community Foundation of Canada. So that's a big announcement.
Congrats, that's exciting. Thanks. David, go ahead.
Yep,
Yeah.
David Abalos with the Duluth area, and I'm a farmer, but also work for Extension, and we're right now reviewing 21 idea briefs that will look for either full proposals or not around sustainability. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Great, thank you. Mindy, why don't you go ahead and go next? I'm just doing a quick intro.
I'm Mindy Gramley, and I am the Sustainability Officer for the City of Duluth. I've been here about 1 year, and I'm currently working on getting whole city response and climate action planning together for our actions and strategies on climate. And I feel like food needs to be one of those, even though it hasn't come up yet within our group. But the AmeriCorps I'm working with, Lily, she was like, "Did you notice food access and local food production didn't come up?" And like, totally noticed it. And also, I have one thing I want to bring up to the group, maybe afterwards, about a local planning survey for Minnesota folks. Maybe David and Randy already know about it, but if there's time later, that'd be great.
Great, that'd be awesome. Yeah, thanks, Mindy. Naren?
Hi, everyone. I'm Naren
You just
Cameron.
appeared.
I'm a professor at Algoma University and in the geography, geology, and land stewardship. And my relation to this project is I'm working actually with David right now. We have a shared intern who's helping create some food forest and other food growing and engagement activities on our campus at Algoma University. So we're very lucky to be working with David. So looking forward to this.
Awesome. And that's with David Thompson. Yeah, we have 2 Davids with us today. Awesome. I'll keep going with people who are not presenting today. So Jacob, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Jake Porter. I'm with Thunder Bay Hot Hub, the climate adaptation coordinator for the city of Thunder Bay. So work on one portion of the climate projects in our city. And I'm just excited to hear today about some of the food issues and how other areas are addressing this.
Awesome. Thanks, Jacob. Laura, would you mind doing just a real quick name, hub you're associated with, and a real quick what you do? Laura, I don't know if you can hear me, but you can throw that in the chat too, if that's easier for you. So maybe I'll pass it off to David Thompson, and then we'll go to Randy and then Julie for intros. And then Julie, when it gets to you, you can just go right into presenting, and I'll let Julie and Randy go, and then we'll switch it over to David to share about rain. So go ahead and pop through that way.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. David Thompson, manager of the Rural Agri Innovation Network at Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center. So we're part of the Sault Ste. Marie hub along here with Naren and Jonathan. And so today I'm just going to be covering one of the initiatives that we focused on over the year, but I won't get into too much now. I'll let Randall go through his first, and I'll join you a bit later.
Okay, hi, my name is Randy Hansen, and I'm a hub leader here in Duluth, one of them, and have learned a lot from our partners around the big lake here. I'm co-director at the program, at the Eco Entrepreneurship Program at Lake Superior College, and have worked in regional food systems and at a statewide scale for maybe 15 years, and am very interested in learning about shared practices around the lake at this kind of watershed scale that we share. I think Julie maybe handed the baby.
And I'm Julie Allen with the in Duluth. I'm the coordinator for the Lake Superior chapter of the Sustainable Farming Association, which is a Minnesota-wide nonprofit. And I guess I'm supposed to go into our presentation now, huh? I'm gonna hand it over to Randy first, and he's gonna give an overview, and then I'll talk about our new website.
Great. Okay, well, so one of my tasks is that I'm also a vice chair of this Lake Superior Sustainable Farming Association, and have been in that role for, I guess, 2 years, and have worked with SFA, Lake Superior Sustainable Farming, for the decade long or more. And as Julie said, the Lake Superior Sustainable Farming Association is a regional chapter of the larger statewide Sustainable Farming Association here in Minnesota. And we're a coalition of consumers and producers moving farm practices and food systems towards a more sustainable future. And our region here is both in 8 counties or so in northeastern Minnesota and corresponding 8 counties in northwestern Wisconsin. And so, as we said, we're a sort of regional chapter of the larger statewide organization. I believe we're the largest of the regional chapters in Minnesota, but also are the only one that is a independent 501c3 or nonprofit organization within the statewide or the regional chapters. So the Sustainable Farming Association more generally grew out of some of the farm crises in Minnesota in the 1980s and the kind of related degradation of landscapes associated with conventional farming and the abandonment really of small scale farming in the United States, and was associated initially with the Land Stewardship Project, another more policy-oriented organization in Minnesota. And, you know, in Northeast Minnesota, we in some sense mirror farming issues all across the United States, and in other ways we're different. In Northeast Minnesota, we saw a real boom in small scale farming, really around the turn of the century, 1910s, 1920s, and an explosion of smaller farms in the wake of clear cutting and the need to actually create a sort of settler colonial food system in that period. And there was a kind of flourishing of that in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. But like so much in the United States, World War II changed everything. The rise of consumerism and the capture of so many of our economic systems by corporations. And that included the Farm Bill, which by the 1970s has really shifted support in the United States from smaller scale farms to increased corporate and larger systems. And so that sort of left smaller scale farms, you know, in a lurch, so to speak. And I think that the Sustainable Farming Association and Land Stewardship Project and really the Minnesota Farmers Union in Minnesota to sort of bolster the smaller family-oriented sustainable farms. And so that's what I think the niche that we with the Lake Superior Sustainable Farming Association occupy. And what's really exciting, I think, since the 1990s, but even more so, I think, you know, in the last few years, we've witnessed an explosion of small scale farms starting, and young people in particular launching new farms. And we also have something called the Duluth Young Farmers Coalition, which is quite active and energetic. And we're seeing, again, small scale farmers really, you know, proliferate in number and type. And it's quite exciting to sort of see. And yet you know, we also are constrained by the lack of infrastructure, whether that's meat processing plants or aggregation and processing systems and redistribution systems that can service institutions, whether they're farms or rather schools or hospitals or higher education, daycares and so forth. And so as we're expanding with new farms and farmers, we have some challenges to face in terms of going beyond the direct market that's been so successful. And so the Lake Superior Sustainable Farming Association has had a long-term project with the Harvest Fest for 25 some years at Bayfront in early September. It's the largest sort of gathering, probably 10,000 people assemble, and farmers markets and all kinds of sustainable agriculture and food systems activities and other related sustainability things. But our organization also sponsors a variety of other activities, including field days that help farmers think about different aspects of their work. Farmers take the stage, farmers take the stove, and other things. And like so many things, COVID changed our organization dramatically. Constricting in-person activities. And, we're small enough where we didn't really have the capacity to figure out how to do a lot. But one of the things that we did was launch the Roots and Recipes website that Julie will talk about here. And we were able to draw on funds associated with the Northeast Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships that David works with, the Lloyd K. Johnson, a local foundation, our Lake Superior Living Lab Network, and some other funds to really seek to launch this website that tries to connect eaters, consumers with producers, farmers to advance seasonal and local eating, which especially was booming in this pandemic. And with those words, I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
Great, I'm gonna put the baby down in a second. And hopefully he'll stay asleep for me. All right, so yeah, and who do we thank for the funding that came through the Lake Superior Living Labs Network? Because anyway, thank you. And you're represented here on this website. So we, this came about very quickly, actually, and, with rapid response funding to respond to COVID. And it's still a work in progress. And, we're working on it. We welcome feedback and are excited about it. So, more people are cooking at home more than ever before, and we want to encourage them to use local food. And so this, at its most simple is just a recipe sharing platform. And all of these, the recipes will highlight local foods and they are designed for the average home cook. Most of them have been submitted by farmers and fellow, local food lovers in our region. And so they're to be for, anybody in the average kitchen with average tools, nothing fancy. So yeah, and we're currently, putting out a plug to get more recipes on here and really beef up our, no pun intended, beef up the store of recipes here. We also are highlighting all of our, well, at least most of our member farmers who are members of LSSFA, and these go directly to their websites. And hopefully in during the growing season, this will do a more concerted marketing effort at the beginning of this growing season, and those will go to their online stores for the farmers that have online stores, and we'll be highlighting recipes with seasonal ingredients and highlighting farmers that have those ingredients for sale and where people can get them. And then we're also, this is, basic stuff about how to utilize and store local vegetables, because I think we can't overlook this, that a lot of this knowledge has been lost and people don't know, how to properly store or cook with whole foods anymore. So storage tips and, for like, if you get a farm share once a week, how to store them, but also how to store stuff for, for somebody who wants to grow things at scale and store them for the winter. There is what we call the Western Lake Superior region of Northwest Wisconsin and Northeast Minnesota. More information about us. And then we invite, anybody and everybody to submit a recipe and to share your food, share your recipes and celebrate local food. Give me a second. So like I said, we're excited to do a more concerted marketing effort this spring and summer, which will include, inviting people to submit their own recipes as well. Brandon, do you want to add anything?
I just wanted to say that, on the Roots tab there, Julie, for our compatriots around the lake, there's maybe some local information about agriculture in our region. Something that David Abaz worked on along with others, defining the agricultural landscape of the Western Lake Superior region, which is a study about whether or not we have the land to become fully self-provisioning, if that were a goal. Another article that I had written on the history of, sort of a brief history of our agri-food system in this region. And then a couple other articles that look at the history of agriculture in this region. And people may or may not be interested in those, but I just wanted to point that out.
That's awesome. Thank you both for sharing. I know Stacy Stark, so it's also fun to see people I know in Duluth still popping up. Thanks so much. I hope I wasn't cutting you off. Is that about what we had prepared? Awesome. Okay. Folks, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat now, but I'm going to let David Thompson, giving us no uncertain questions on which country he's joining us from today, and go ahead and share about your work, and then we can get to a little discussion at the end.
Sure. Thanks, Rachel. Well, for today, I just thought I'd share how, what my journey has been from being a graduate at Algoma University, working in the field of community economic and social development now with my role in RAIN. So I'm just going to share my screen here if I can.
You should be able to.
Yeah, I have so many things open. It makes it a little tricky though. Okay. Here we go. Okay, is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Looks good.
Okay. So I just thought I'd talk about my experience working with local beef producers in our area, as they were on this trajectory after mad cow crisis BSE. It kind of made them pause and take stock of how things could be done differently. And so it was around that time when I joined a group of farmers, and they, labeled themselves Pinokian Hills Farms with the following mission to produce the highest standard of tasty, nutritious beef while enhancing the environment and supporting the local community. So around this time, I was at the university working for Nordic Research Institute, the community-based research institute, and we partnered with them to do market research on their products in the regional market. We did strategic planning with them. We did a business plan for them to buy an abattoir. And this turned into my MBA research to have a closer look at what are the challenges that farmers were facing to really expand these businesses to sell into the regional market, but also larger markets, and how they can effectively raise their income through these value chain relationships. So with Pinokian, they started about 2005, and they contracted farms to raise beef to certain specifications. And in the early days, it was mostly direct to consumer. So at that time, it was really important that farms met together to talk about these alternatives, look at the strengths of their community, who could help them. And there was a lot of connections made in those early stages to get them started. And around this time, they really struggled with low profit margin and insufficient sales to cover key expenses like marketing and employees. So we had a number of projects through Northern Ontario Heritage Fund, which is a funder in Northern Ontario through the provincial government, to get interns to work with them on marketing campaigns for selling beef regionally. The abattoir was under a lot of pressure to make upgrades, but they couldn't keep up as they were usually operating at a loss from not having enough volume of product. So there's also issues with getting a good consistency from the abattoir in terms of quality cuts. And there was a need to get more wholesale relationships, but it was very difficult at that time because of the amount of gaps in infrastructure, both on farm and processing, that we experienced around that time. So it was about 2014 or 2013 when two of the original shareholders, they streamlined the Pinokian Hills Farms business and took it over, and they've since developed it into a thriving wholesaling beef business to restaurants and butcher shops in Ontario. And it was around that same time when I started with my role at the Rural Agri Innovation Network to learn about what they were doing differently, how they wanted to expand further into the Ontario market. And so around this time, they still maintain relationships with about 10 farms for cattle and crops in Algoma. So in 2015, they purchased the abattoir in Bruce Mines. Now this abattoir was built basically to focus on custom slaughter from local producers, and it was owned by a nonprofit made up of largely from farmers in the area. So they took it over and they expanded their marketing of beef. So when they took it over, that plant was doing around 50 head of cattle, and then they upped it to about 600 head of cattle in 2019. So they expanded to so much where they're not able to expand anymore in this present facility. So at the facility, they employ about 8 employees. And over the years, there was a number of improvements for freezer capacity. But on the other hand, other local farmers had to send animals elsewhere because it was totally at capacity. And so we've had farmers here sending animals as far as Manitoulin Island to Massey, which is about 3 hours east of us. So it's been a significant challenge as well. Around the time when they were looking at scaling up, they realized they needed to have a finishing yard for animals as well. And so another corporation formed around this time, Algoma Beef Corp, which takes the local animals, finishes them, and sells them to Pinokian Hills at a specification. And so they have the finishing blends that evolved over time as they learned how to do this. And so the ration for the animals is all made in Northern Ontario, from producers in Algoma to New Liskeard. So knowing that they needed to scale up this expansion, the Rural Agri Innovation Network worked to put together delegations to trade shows in Toronto. The Restaurants Canada trade show was one of them that we supported them with. We also supported, with a local food festival, Eat Algoma, Farmer Chef networking forums, and the Buy Algoma Buy Local, which is a marketing platform for farms and processors in our area. So this effort has led to them further scaling up in the wholesale. When COVID hit, that had another impact on restaurants. There was a few different projects that really kind of got them over a few challenges over the years with RAIN support. And one was around logistics. So they were able to purchase a reefer install on the back of a pickup truck through a small grant program that we administer. They were able to upgrade traceability systems so that they could be able to barcode products and trace them back to the animal. And they also, there was also a number of projects for tile drainage infrastructure in our area too that RAIN facilitated through Heritage Fund. So there was a number of different funding programs that assisted them over the years to kind of be able to realize their growth and expansion. So with the present abattoir, it's about 50 years old, so it couldn't really meet their demands. So it's their plan to buy a new abattoir. So the new abattoir that they wanted to get had 3-phase power, natural gas, municipal water sewer access. So they found a location in a town or east of a town called Bruce Mines in Algoma. And it would make it easier for them to get access to the highway. They also wanted the butcher shop alongside of the road. So this location had some good qualities. The facility, the new one, is about 12,000 square feet, state-of-the-art meat processing plant with butcher shop. So significant upgrade from the abattoir previously. So this is from the fall, but there were some challenges looking at this new location. We started to deal with issues around public concern, which took about a year. And the residents of Bruce Mines, the town there, they didn't really know what to expect in terms of the smell, the noise that was going to be present with an abattoir. So the company had to go through third-party studies to prove that there wasn't going to be any issues. Another hurdle was the approval of a location for compost and offal from the waste from the abattoir. And so the option pursued was through a landfill, municipally managed by 3 different municipalities, townships in Algoma. Another challenge was just the slow movement of approvals through the provincial government, and COVID didn't really help with that. A lot of people were working from home. So the process has been a couple of years to build a new abattoir. It started off in their minds being about 1.5 million, and it's ended up to be about $4 million in terms of a facility. So in terms of the layout of the abattoir, this is kind of like what it looks like, which is like kind of like a hazard analysis critical control point like diagram. So, starting from the left, like there's areas, I think in terms of the amount of cattle it can hold before, there's about room for about 24 head, 8 head for an overnight pen, where animals go through a fabrication room to be hung, and the hanging capacity has room for about 81 sides in a chill cooler, and has room for another 60 sides in another hanging cooler. And it also has, a part of this facility for processing, but also for ready-to-eat products, so smoking, curing meat. And it also has a retail food store where people can come in and buy product here, but also are able to see the meat aging in a cooler close by. So the facility, yeah, it's pretty impressive in terms of its design. So the goal now is to complete the site work, and the move in to the new facility is slated for August 2021. So we've been helping another farm that's buying the older abattoir with regards to continuing on with that business, because there still is a need for local producers to have that processing capacity. And COVID's really increased the demand for the custom animal slaughter bookings, as well as the retail market for Pinokian Hills product. But the loss of restaurant sales has certainly been felt with them, and they had to really pivot their model. And so the booking schedule has been overrun since the start of the pandemic, and they had to take away a lot of requests for animals. And so they have, they've chosen not to do the farmers market, due to the risks entailed with that. And they, through this past year, they accessed some funding through RAIN for COVID adaptation project to help them increase their productivity by getting some better boning knives, electric skinning knives, so that they could safely debone carcasses and increase productivity. So that's kind of like an overview of a project I thought might be of interest to share, because it kind of relates in my academic world to my working world now, working with these farms over the many years anyway. So be happy to answer any questions you guys might have about it, or yeah.
Great, thanks, David. Yeah, so lots to talk about. I know I have a couple of questions, but I want to open it up to others to put in the chat, or you can just feel free to unmute and ask a question. And Randy, David, Julie, feel free to ask each other questions too. We're not limited in that way.
Yeah, just to add to that, there was a press release as well in the paper, so check that out. The one farm that's taking over the abattoir is a bison farm, a local bison farm, and they'll be able to increase their meat production for bison, which is pretty cool. And one question I have for David though is, if a new farmer wanted to start a small farm, and we do produce cows, we produce different products, lots of carrots are grown, potatoes, whatever. But if there's something that's undergrown in the region, how would they be able to start a small farm to be able to produce that product that's not grown here or not available in the region?
So you're looking at what opportunities might exist in the market, you mean, for things that aren't grown now? Is that the question?
Yeah, or say you go to the mill market and you could find certain products. You could find carrots, potatoes, cucumbers, whenever you want them. Let's say you wanted turnips, and there's only one farmer that's growing turnips. How could then another farmer come in and be able to meet that supply for turnips in the region?
Yeah, well, I mean, Laura, I think mentioned this in the chat is with this new plan, it'll be doing cattle. So other animals either lamb or goats. I mean, that's a market that's being unfulfilled, my opinion now. But there's such bottlenecks now with that present abattoir. So hopefully, once this farm is able to take over, that would open up some processing capacity so that could continue. I think that's one of the areas, as well as for poultry. The poultry line that they have at the existing abattoir isn't even that fully utilized of what it could be. And I know that there's some producers that are interested in artisanal chicken licenses and continuing on with that, but it's difficult because it's right now it's just it could be a year, you know, before that is all put into place, right? We do have a lot of produce that's grown in our area. I think the lack of further processing of that produce is one you know, potential niche that's not fulfilled for sure.
Is that, can I ask, is so the primary funding for this new facility is, you know, I know you touched on that, but where, can you just talk a little bit about that?
Of how it's being funded in its development? Yeah.
Yes.
So they did get some provincial and federal funds for the new abattoir build. I believe federally there was just over $1 million of low interest loans that was committed. I believe there's also some pending, some other things pending with the province, but nothing has been announced there yet. But I'm sure it will be very soon.
But the rest of it is private.
Yeah, it's predominantly private. So if you look at the primary owner or one of the co-owners his name is Mike Tulloch. So Mike Tulloch comes from an agricultural background. He went to Guelph in agricultural engineering, and then he started and ran a company called Tulloch Engineering for many years. And so Tulloch Engineering is a multi-million-dollar company that services all of Ontario and even further. So he retired from Tulloch Engineering, and it was around that time, and I think I was talking to him, and I was at his house, and I said, like, I picked up the business plan that I wrote for the abattoir, and I was like, Mike, are you thinking about actually getting into this business? This is crazy. You're gonna lose money. And he's like, well, it's a very interesting opportunity. And he's like, I'm really looking at something where I can kind of really get involved in the agriculture sector. And he's like, you have my interest. So yeah, so that's kind of like, I think the majority of where the capital is really coming from is predominantly private.
Okay, and if you have any extra multimillionaires, we would welcome in Duluth.
Yeah.
What's the exchange rate? Good question. I actually also, I have a question that's a bit different than what either of you talked about. You both mentioned food festivals, and I was just wondering what, if you could talk real briefly about the who's going to those food festivals, what's the, like, what networking are you finding there? I'm curious if how similar or different they might be in your different spaces and what benefit they have for your organizations.
Julie,
you guys want to start first? Yeah.
Julie's the coordinator of the Harvest Fest, so.
Yeah, so the Harvest Fest started as a farmer's market, and it has grown to be a really, you know, a very grand farmer's market, which also includes artists and craftspeople and food trucks and live music. And like Randy said, we have somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 people that come on one day. And, you know, we've almost, we keep it free. So it's free to attend. And it's really just, you know, very celebratory. And it's kind of, you know, it's primarily to create a really good, profitable market for our local farmers. And it's kind of turned into, you know, a really big celebratory community event. However, we did not have it in 2020. And in 2021, we're figuring out what it's going to look like in this new COVID world. What I think we're going to lean towards is like not just one day, but spread it out onto 2 or maybe more days, and also include you know, an online portion of it. So there's more like online buying and then in-person pickup. You know, and that'd be a good question for like our vendors, the farmers who actually sell, like they all love coming, you know, to actually interact with customers, farmers who primarily either wholesale or maybe they only do a CSA and they don't do a farmer's market regularly. They really enjoy having this one time to come and be in the public and see all of their customers in person, you know, normally. And likewise for artisans and craftspeople, I think too. And then we also have like a nonprofit exhibitor tent as well. And I think that is a space for a lot of, you know, community learning for people to go and learn about organizations that either offer services or have volunteer opportunities or things like that. But it's also a really good networking for, you know, all of the exhibitors that are under one tent, for example, or all the farmers who actually get to see each other on that one day. So lots of different layers of networking.
And we've talked about the possibility of doing some mutual visits around the lake, and if it would coincide with that event and people coming here, I think it would be a great networking opportunity if that ever eventuates.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess for our region, back in 2013 when I started with RAIN, we felt that there was a need for like a festival to celebrate food, and we called it Eat Algoma. We ran Eat Algoma, I think, 3 times, and with the event, it was a way to engage farms in a market, like kind of like a pop-up market. We had it downtown Sault Ste. Marie, so we closed off the street. So we had a pop-up market. Then we had like having local chefs cooking with local food. And so we ran it, and it was a lot of work. And I think we got to a place where we realized, like, well, we could do this big festival where we're already busy during the summer with other things, or we could focus on smaller events. And that's the direction we decided to go into. But since COVID, we haven't been having smaller events, like more kind of intimate dinners, that sort of thing. But we hope to bring them back. We had an event at Stokely Creek Lodge, which is like a skiing resort in just north of the Sioux. So we had a day of snowshoeing and skiing, and then eating local food. And we had another one at Thompson Farms, which is a winery in our area, another dinner. So we'd like to be doing more of that.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Other questions from anybody?
David, do you have anything to add or observe or contribute or question? You're involved in so many different pieces that, yeah, just throwing that out there.
This David?
Yeah, that David.
I was wondering if it sounds like maybe there's more support in Canada from the governmental type level. You know, I don't know how to compare that. I just don't think food as a governmental thing in the United States is a real priority towards these small farming enterprises. And I was just wondering about getting access to capital in the 2 different locations. That was just something I was curious about. And I don't know if we have that information, but it seems like Canada's more proactive with kind of building systems around this, but maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I'm looking back at these years, a lot of the support has been coming through organizations or agencies within government that are focused on Northern Ontario, as opposed to Ontario as a whole, to kind of get projects going and get capital. So yeah, like with both governments, because we've had both Liberal and Conservative, and I think between them both, yeah, we've seen strong support for agriculture and food from the infrastructure capital in the north. Yeah, across the board, I would say. I don't know how that compares with how it works in the States, but yeah.
other
I-
provinces too, they do support like farming. Obviously, I'm from the west, from Saskatchewan. Just recently, there was a local farmer that started up a winery that was like funded provincially, and like they have other like farm programs. I think it's more they're just used to it, but yeah, I think so. Definitely in Canada, there is like both federal and provincial programs, and like other extensions, like organizations. A lot of co-ops and things that like really farmers just really work together and get things done.
Seems like we're doing, cupcake sales to get our stuff done. So it's, I'm glad to hear that. And it seems maybe with the nature of agriculture in Canada, it's a little more smaller operations as well, or a combination thereof. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I wasn't super involved in food when I lived in Minnesota. So part of this is the bias of me now being involved in food now that I'm in Canada. But it does seem like I just hear so many more like, oh, there's this funding, there's this, there's that. And the funding I heard about in Duluth was for small businesses, but I never heard anybody framing it as a farm, as a business, right? I never, a friend who started Lake Superior Art Glass, right? That's a business, but it's not a farm. So, there were streams for that, which seemed to be somehow separate. But I think I definitely have a bias in my experience. Erica, thanks for your link in the chat here. That'd be great. And then I also wanted to point out, David Thompson, I don't know if you saw the chat, but Laura is suggesting you guys talk about slow food and some ideas with Slow Fish and Chefs Alliance. And Naren has a great question here, which maybe is something I know we also are trying to end with a few minutes before everyone has their next meeting. How can our hubs work together on this topic? So I wonder if I might just send everybody out. Laura, or Erica, did you want to add something about that link there?
No, I just wanted to share a link that this is something that's happening in the Western Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And so it's sort of a collaborative or coalition of people who are working together, trying to find funding sources and just support one another's projects. So just wanted to put that in the chat as part of what we're looking at here today.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks to all of our presenters. I have a couple announcements, but if we could do a quick round of applause for everybody who announced, that would be great. Shared things. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. If you have more questions, please feel free to reach out. I think everyone's okay with that. I wanted to let you know of a couple upcoming things related to the network, and then we'll call it a day. Or at least call it.
Mindy wanted to add something, perhaps.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you, Mindy, you had mentioned at the beginning?
Oh yeah, I guess with the Minnesota folks on the call, the regional engagement process has started for the ARDC's comprehensive economic development strategy. Is anyone engaged in that? Because I was at the okay, good. I see nods. Awesome. Okay, that's what I want to make sure. I was at the February 19th one, and local food systems and food distribution was on the ideas list, but we broke into these kind of breakout rooms, and it just seemed like I was like the sole sustainability voice. There was Leanne Little Wolf was there, which was great. And so it was funny, her and I were sort of pinging back and forth off of each other's comments, but we kind of felt like outnumbered a little bit when we were trying to talk about sustainability strategies. So just making sure everybody else go sign up. There's a whole bunch more of those forums. I'll put the link in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Mindy. Thanks for the reminder, Randy. Okay, so March 5th, folks, we at Lakehead are presenting 4 of those sustainability stories videos that we recorded out of Thunder Bay. It's at 1:45. I'll send an email about that, but it's going to be a great opportunity to chat about some of those questions that were raised in those videos. Our next mini meetup is about seeds. We're just going to say that. It'll be myself and David Abaz, and then we're hoping Zach, but I haven't heard back from him in email for a while. So I'm going to tentatively tell everybody that's March 15th. but again, an email to come. And then the third March thing, so we have 3 Living Labs things, is March 27th and 28th is a weekend, and it's the Duluth Power Dialogue. So Catherine is largely running that and hosting that. It was canceled last year, unfortunately, because of COVID. So really excited to actually get to that this year as a virtual event. So I'll send an email with all of those dates and times. And then, yeah, we've got some plans for April and May and hoping to get those mini meetups still rolling. So thanks for being here. We'll let you go take a 5-minute break before your next meeting, and we'll see you all next time, hopefully.
Thank you for your work, Rachel.
No problem. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
I want these links.